I'm talking about my CMO all the time now. Like, there is something to be said about being in proximity with people, and the ROI is important, but the ROR, which is return on relationship, is way more important.
What's up, and welcome back to the Scale Your Sales Podcast. I am your host and your soon-to-be podcast BFF, Jillian Murphy. If you are absolutely exhausted of hearing the same podcast that only leaves you feeling motivated and just a bunch of fluff, well, you have absolutely landed on the right podcast today. In this episode, we are going to talk about the most important skill you need to generate your business, and that is sales. We are going to dive into topics such as messaging, marketing, how to build lead generation organically, and we are going to talk about how to create consistent cash months inside of your business. And we are also going to talk about how to build a company that isn't just about making money, but is also bringing in actual wealth, while getting back to what I know is your most important thing, time freedom. Now, I am here for real talk, real advice, straightforward tip, and no BS. You can always walk away and implement everything that we talk about in our show and move it into your business immediately. But I have to tell you, I am not your typical business mentor. We are going to talk about things that nobody else is probably talking about on the internet. We are going to talk about what it takes to build a real company, and not just about how to manifest your business or how you can make $1 million tomorrow. But if that's what you're looking for, this podcast is absolutely not for you. We are going to talk about the real skills to build a real business. Now, I have spent over 25 years in the corporate sales space, generating over $100 million in sales through multiple industries in the online and the brick and mortar space. I have been able to help over 500 entrepreneurs not only grow their sales, but scale their businesses. Several times per week, I'm going to bring you solo episodes, guest episodes, and even hot seat coaching, so that you are able to scale your sales. Now, grab a pen and paper, your beverage of choice, and let's freaking go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Community. I'm so excited. I have a friend here, Jill. Jill is a sales maven. I'm so excited to have her here today. I've had her on the podcast before, and it was a really great episode. I'll also link the time I went on Jillian's podcast as well. But Jill and I just were in Chris's mastermind together, and we got to dream up so much stuff this past year. So, Jill, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, Kristina, thank you so much. You were just absolutely like one of my favorite humans. Before we even hit record, I'm like, can we just like sit here and just have like girl time together and just catch up? So you're just so good at what you do and just such an amazing energy. And I've loved being in the mastermind with you this year as well. And I love that we're going to have an opportunity to share each other out on each other's podcast yet again.
Yes. And next time I'm in Arizona, we're going to have to hang. Like, that's
obviously
a must. Jill is a absolute sales queen, sales maven, teaches people how to sell. But I would love for you, Jillian, to tell people a bit about you and kind of your story into how you got into teaching people how to sell online.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I always say I have like a 30-second story. I was in corporate sales for 22, 23 years. I don't really remember how many years it was at this point. And I lost my corporate job during the pandemic. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew that I had a God-given talent for sales. So I quickly shifted to the online space, where we were right in the point where everybody was moving to the online space, right? Coaches, consultants, service providers, network marketers, affiliate sellers. And it was so cringy to me, is really the only word that I can say, is it was so cringy to me how terrible people were at selling, but I knew they had really great products, right? And it was interesting because when I first started out, I was actually really focused on network marketers because they were easy for me to kind of like pinpoint out, right? I didn't really know much about the digital space yet. And I was like, they love their products. They love what they're selling. They're excited about it, but like, it's so bad to watch them. So I started a Facebook group, and I basically just invited a bunch of network marketers into it. And I started putting up these videos. And from there, my business really grew. It grew to, how can I hire you? How can you work with me? How can you come into our company? How can you consult us? And, you know, the rest is a little bit history from here. But what I've learned in the last 3.5 years in the online space is it doesn't matter if you're looking to hit your first six figures, your first dollar, your first $60, $600, your first $6 million. It all comes down to how much you can sell and how much you can actually close business, because there's a very big difference as well between selling and closing.
Okay, speak more to that, because I agree with you. I think, I look online, especially because sales has never been like a super big problem of mine, but I look online and I'm like, oh, ick, like the way people are doing things. And, maybe they can get a ton of discovery calls, but they're not able to really be able to close the deal. So what's the kind of difference there?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference is, well, I think you have marketing, Rich, right? Is like your marketing is going to be how people first find you, right? Whether it's a podcast, whether it's your content, right? So first you have to understand, like, marketing is a huge part of your sales process. Then it's the selling, right? It's either getting them to come to a webinar, come to a conversion, come to a clarity call, connection call, sales call, or getting them in the DMs. That's only one part of the sales process. But what actually matters in sales more than anything, and I can tell you a story about this from my corporate days, is actually getting a credit card, actually getting a signed agreement or a contract, whatever it is that you call it in your business, because nothing is done in any business until the sale is actually finalized. And when I was in corporate sales, I managed 217 men, no females, all men. And I would literally ask my reps all the time, like, hey, how'd your week go? And they'd be like, oh, it was great. I had this call and I had this connection call and I took these guys out golfing and I took this group of people out to the Red Wings game. And I'm like, cool, bro. But like, did we close any business?
Yes.
Because there's a difference between selling, which all those things are important because you're nurturing the relationship, you're building rapport, but that's not selling. Selling is when, Joe Louis Arena is like, we want to go with your company.
Yeah.
When Beaumont Hospital is like, how do we take you on? Like, that's the close. Very different than just selling.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think is people's barrier, like, to get to that close? Like, what do you think is the thing that keeps people from being able to do that well?
Yeah, they're afraid of rejection. 100%. Like, they are absolutely afraid of rejection. So it's easy to, sell someone. It's easy to, be in the friend zone in the DMs. It's easy to invite people to your networking call. It's easy to invite people to a webinar and teach for an hour.
Yeah.
But then, like, I don't want to fucking close at the end, right? It's easy to do all of these things. But then there's this point in all of us, whether you're male or female, that nobody likes rejection, regardless of anything, right? Nobody wants to be rejected. So it's like, how can I not get into this rejection place? And for most people, you have to do that inner work, that mindset work around that. That's literally so detached from whatever it is. Because when people are saying no to working with you, I want you to hear this. This is like one of my favorite things to say, is they are saying no to getting better into whatever the problem is for them. So let's say someone gets on a sales call with me, even though I don't do sales calls, right? But let's just, for lack of a better term, gets on a call with me to be better. They want to grow their sales. And I give them all the bells and whistles, tell them why they should work with me and why this is a good fit for them. And at the end of the call, they say, I don't think this is the right time, or I'm not ready. They're not saying no to me.
Yeah.
I know that I'm good. They're actually saying no to themselves. And when you can have this shift, it's a game changer.
Yeah, okay, really quickly, do you hear the clicking?
Yeah.
Every time you talk, it clicks. Is
it my mic?
Okay, it was like.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing's around me clicking. I don't have any like weird things happening.
You hear it now?
No, do you hear it?
Yeah. My team would probably be able to edit it out, but like
what's clicking? Can you hear it? Can you hear the clicking?
Yeah.
That's literally so weird.
It feels like it's. Are you on any chance you're on your mouse pad or your keyboard? No.
No, I don't. Even, my keyboard's way over here.
This is so strange.
Yeah,
That's okay.
My keyboard's like not even like my keyboard's literally like right here.
It's just so weird. Okay, it's okay. We could probably edit it out. It's just like a weird, like it's like a. I'm like, Jillian, take your nails off the table.
No, yeah.
Weird. I'm not even touching anything. Okay, we can keep going. So Jillian, one of the things you were talking about is rejection, right? Which is like, I think, a really common thing in business. And I think, honestly, it's a must. I read this a quote the other day I reposted that like Kobe has like the most like records or whatever, but also like the most missed shots.
100%.
But it's so easy for us to get into the like, oh my gosh, I need people to like me, especially online when you're selling a service. And sometimes that service is very linked to yourself, right? You're like a coach or, you're some type of service provider. How would you recommend people be able to get over that rejection?
Yeah. So I love this question because actually when I came to the online space, I was a rock star in sales in the real world, right? Because I was actually sitting behind like some huge brands. Well, then I came to the online space and I was like, oh, now people have to buy from me, right? So there's this thing that I always have my clients do. It's called the list of 100. And it's really creating a list of 100 reasons why, like, you're the man or you're the woman for the job and why you're so good at what you do. And really always going back to that list over and over and over. So when someone rejects me or when someone doesn't like a post or I get a troll, right? Whatever it is, I just go back to my literal list of 100 and I'm like, I literally do not care about that person or that thing because this is the work that I've done inside.
Mm-hmm. Love that, because I think that is something that people really like. It keeps them from like greatness, me and Maria, we always laugh about social media, and I'm like, I only want like moderate success on social media because I don't want any feedback from people. Yes. And I would like no trolls. But you gotta risk it to get the biscuit. Like you can't be Jenna Kutcher without getting feedback, right? So I
100%.
think that that's such a hard part. But I think especially when you're selling, what are some things, Jill, that give you the ick on selling?
Oh my gosh. So me personally, the thing that gives me one of the biggest icks on selling is just not listening. Yeah. Like not listening to what it is that I actually need and trying to push your products on me. So this is actually how I sold when I was in corporate sales. So I was in corporate sales. I worked for an organization. I was the first female hired since 1963. And I used to go out into the sales force with the men and we were food service sales reps, right? So food and beverage sales. So we would get like a flyer every week on Monday and it would be like, oh, push this item, push this item, push this item, push this item. So I would be in the car with these reps for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And I would see them going into these businesses and being like, this is what you should carry this week. This is what you should put on the menu this week. This is what you should throw in your concession stand. And I remember sitting back as like a 22-year-old girl and being like, they didn't even ask for that. Like, does the chef even want to make steak or are we just trying to like force box beef on him because we have a promotion from the manufacturer? So that's really how I started selling very early on was I would just go in and I would ask really good questions like what are you interested in? What's working well? What's not working well? How would you like to make this different? How could I make your life easier? What do you like about your current company, right? And the thing that happens is your sales resistance just naturally comes down because when you're pushing and you're aggressive and you're kind of like in your face, there's a natural resistance that comes up to the other person on the other end. This is why if you go into like any luxury store, like walk into a Louis Vuitton or a Gucci, you have to literally try to find somebody to sell you something. Because what they want is they want you so calm and so chill walking around their store. You're never going to walk into like a Louis Vuitton and someone's going to be like, hi, what are you looking for today?
Yes.
Like, no, they're almost taught to be like a little bit rude, a little bit more laid back. You just do your thing over there and then we'll come to you. So again, like that's one of the biggest things that you could start to do. And one of my biggest icks for sure is just like not even knowing what I actually need.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that, especially someone who sells often, right? That it's like asking people what they need and eventually even sometimes like I find that people don't even know what they need, but like you being able to ask really good questions is so important. And like, and I think that art is kind of lost where people like aren't asking questions. They're talking about themselves, talking about their services, talking about the transformation. But if there isn't like that personal rapport, it's really hard to get past that block.
Yeah, there's actually 3 questions or 3 things that I think that everyone should do initially on a sales call that I think probably 99% of you are actually not doing. And I actually just had a really good friend of mine on the podcast who's another sales expert. And him and I talked about these questions too, because him and I are so similar in the questions that we ask because it's so important that you also know who you're talking to, right? So I'm going to give you guys an example. We're going to role play this really quick. If I got on a sales call today with Kristina and I said to Kristina, how was your day? Kristina would be like, oh my gosh, let me tell you about how I'm feeling. Let me tell you about my weekend. Let me tell you about Josh. Let me tell you what I'm working on. Like, she would tell me all the things, right? And what I know about that answer is that she is someone who works in her feminine. I also know that she is someone who relationship is really, really important to, right? So by asking this simple question, how is your day going? Or how is your day? You're going to be able to tell very quickly how she operates. Okay. Now, if this was reversed and Kristina got on a sales call with me and she was like, hey, Jillian, how was your day? I'd be like, my day is good and I'm super busy. That would be it. Right. And Christina's like, yeah, that's 100% what you would say.
Yeah.
Because
all her answers when we're like socially talking, she's like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm like, I'm gonna need like a little. What did I call you? I called you ominous. And you were like, I'm trying to be less ominous.
Trying to be less ominous. But you guys, even though I'm a female, I operate very much in my dominant. Okay. So if you're on the other end, what you need to pick up is she's not here for chit chat. She's very busy. And she also wants you to know that she's going to control this call because that's something that someone of a dominant personality does, right? So just by asking this very simple question, you can tell that. Now, if I got on a sales call with Kristina, I would also know instantly she works in her feminine because she's got flowers on today. Her background is a little chill. She's got a couch back there. And I don't know if she has any plants in her office, but let's say things were moved around. I would look at what's happening in the background, okay? If Kristina comes to my call, usually I'm in a hoodie, usually a baseball hat, and there's no decorations behind me. There's just a black and white wall. So very, like, I don't want to say sterile is the right word, but like there's not a lot of like fluff. So you can tell so much. When you're getting on calls, look at what's happening behind. Also, are they taking their call from the bed? Are they taking their call from the car? Is it unorganized? Do they have AirPods on and they're not really listening? Like, there's so many things that you can actually do that makes a big difference just to learn right away how this call is going to operate. A call with Kristina might be an hour, a sales call. A sales call with me better not be more than 15 minutes. You need to know that going into it with somebody.
So do you, and I asked this question kind of knowing the answer to this, so I'm just going to ask you this, but like, I know you are not like obsessed with sales calls. Like that isn't something that you partake in a ton. And you do a lot of selling in the DMs. And I think that that's even for me, like I couldn't even imagine not having a sales call. Like I've always just done it.
Yeah.
So how do you encourage people to like make that transition, or like, who is that good for?
Yeah. So number one is what I say is you train your audience how to buy. So if I don't tell my audience that I have sales calls, then my audience isn't going to know that I actually have sales calls, right? If you're training your audience to buy via email, you better drive people to email. If you're driving people to a webinar because you're really good selling on a webinar, then drive them to a webinar, right? You train your audience how to buy. But if you're in your Instagram stories and you're like, hey, let's get on a call, let's book a call, and that's not where you want to go, then like, number one, don't be doing that.
Yeah.
The second part of this is, I actually have an Instagram reel coming out about this. I'm so glad that you asked this. I've never gotten on a sales call with somebody. Yeah. I actually don't want to get on a sales call with somebody. I have purchased over $250,000 of products in the online space in the last 3 years, whether that's coaching, masterminds, memberships, courses, whatever it is. I've never gotten on a sales call, nor would I. So also remembering that most people, not most, but most people in today's world don't also want to get on a sales call because they're also busy. They're going, right? So if you're trying to attract a higher level caliber of client, know that like they're also not getting on sales calls. I use our friend Dan Martell, and I say friend like he's not our friend, but like our friend Dan Martell in the online space. Dan Martell has closed like the amount of sales he has closed in the DMs is crazy. Dan Martell's clients don't want to get on sales calls with Dan.
So it's interesting you use him as an example. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but I was trying to decide between working with him and working with Chris, and and the price difference was quite large. Like, and I still ended up working with Chris, but part of the reason for that was because I didn't like the selling in the DMs.
Yeah.
And that's something he teaches his people. So it's not
100%.
shit talking his sales process. He's a
Yeah.
little genius. Everyone needs to read my book
Yes.
Time.
Yeah.
But
Through his process, you guys, it's genius.
yeah, like so good. But he like I was getting like DM'd and I was like, oh, I love the relationship. And the reason I invested with Chris is I've invested with Chris many times. I've had really good experiences. I'm a relationship person.
Yeah.
And I knew Chris was going to get me great results. And so it's just funny because I think, you know, different things apply for different people where
100%.
you're not for everyone. The way you sell is not going to be for everyone.
No. And I think too, like someone like, let's use Chris and Dan as an example. Like I love to do like side by sides, right? Chris is, you're learning about Chris a lot in his stories, right? While you're still learning a little bit about Dan and his stories, not as much on like a personal level. So I think for some people, they want to get on that call with Dan or his team because I think there's still this level of like, you don't know him really well, where like you see someone like a Chris, we see inside his house, we see his dogs, we see his car, right? That's all marketing. We feel like Chris is our friend. We feel like we know Lori. We feel like we know these people. If you watch my stories, you guys feel like you know everything about my life from sun up to sundown. You don't. But I'm bringing you along in it. So if you are trying to move people out of it and relationship is important, make sure you're building a relationship with them through your marketing.
I love that. How important do you think that is, like the personal aspect of sales? Because I have my own thoughts on this where it's like, you know, I'm very similar. Like I'm pretty like open on social. People feel like they know me. And I've had that before where like I'll get on a call with people and they'll be like, where's Patrick? Like, where's your dog? Or like, you know, I'm pregnant and people are like, yeah, I'm so excited. Like you're doing June, right? Like, so it's like such a different like feeling. But I also know there's people who that's like not their comfort zone and they do not want to be personal and they want to only be business. So how important do you think that is?
Yeah, I think I think it's a matter of whatever you want to do, right? Like your level can be as open or as not. But at the end of the day, also know that you are building a personal brand. And like for me, this is something I actually just did an Instagram story on this last week. There's parts of my life I keep very, very close to me and are very private, right? So, you know, I dated someone for 6.5 years. He was on my stories all the time. Now that I'm single, I've been single for, you know, in and out of relationships for the last year and a half. But that part of my life is very sacred. It's very cut close to me. I don't mention anybody's names. I don't show faces. I don't bring them along because so much of the rest of my life is there. Now, if somebody's not going to hire me as their sales mentor because they don't know who I'm dating or who I was out with yesterday or whose hand that was in my coffee picture, well, that's on them, right? But I think as far as like building a personal relationship, you can do it on other levels and also keep this part true. So one of the biggest things people ask me is like, I don't want to show my family online. You know, I don't want to show my kids. I don't want to show my kids' faces. It's like, well, then don't. You absolutely don't have to. You know, if someone's not going to hire you as a business coach because they don't know what your toddler's faces look like, that's work that they got to work on, not you.
Totally. Yeah, and I totally agree because I think it's so interesting because we live in this like society, right, where we feel like we know so much about people, and I think I'm such a buyer from that way where I just feel like I'm like, oh, I like really feel like I trust them. I feel like I'm like, you know, I know a lot about Chris and Lori. Like I'll do fast foundations, like whatever, and then it's kind of grown since that. I'm curious for you, like when you are thinking about like, the full sales process, you know, when people are showing up online, they're showing up consistently. I'm sure a lot of your clients, when they come to you, they're like, hey, I don't even like know where to start to like on the lead gen front.
Yeah.
Because even just thinking about like, okay, you know, they don't want to show up in stories and people create these barriers for themselves, right? Where they're like, oh, I don't want to show up in stories. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Before they've even done anything or have their first 10 followers. I'm curious, like, how would you recommend people find their first few leads?
Yeah. So the number one thing I think that you can do as you are a new business owner is use what's called your warm network. I mean, I personally love Instagram. I think Instagram is a great place. But when I first started, Facebook was actually where a lot of my first clients came from because it was already a warm market, right? People already knew me, whether it was from the gym, from my daughter's school, whether being a competitor, whether it was like high school friends, right? Whatever it is. So I can almost guarantee that you have dollars that are sitting on your personal Facebook group that you are not even tapping into because it's a warm market.
Yeah.
Right. But you want to go to Instagram to this like blue sea over there because it's fun and it's interesting, or TikTok or whatever. But it's a longer process because it's warm. It's cold. It's not warm. So I think the first thing would be to do is go to a warm market. I think the second thing that's hard for people to do, because it goes back to point number one of rejection, is people don't want to ask people for references or referrals or introductions, right? So maybe you are a health coach listening to this podcast right now and you're looking for your first 10 women to join your group coaching program. When's the last time you just reached out to people in your own network and said, hey, I'm excited about this. Let me tell you why. And do you happen to know anybody that you think would be a good fit? I can either follow them on social media or I can connect with them. But like, do you think this is a good fit? Even today in my business with the numbers that we run, I'm still asking people for introductions because it's like a warm lead is going to always be so much easier.
And I'll just add to that because I think this might be helpful, but I had a lot of aversion to that because I'm like, oh, like I don't actually like need more clients. Like it'd be nice, but I don't need more clients. Like whatever. So I'm going back and forth on it. And when I started coaching with Chris was like, because I was like, I think I've done like everything I've done. Like I go to all my events, I do the things. And he's like, you've done all the hard things, like going to events and meeting people in person. He's like, you haven't done anything easy. That's like low hanging fruit. He's like, email 100 people in your network and get them, ask them if they'd be interested in being part of a referral program. And the payout doesn't need to be massive. And it has been like actually like mind blowing to me how many people have like fished their network for me, like where it's like they do 4 or 5 introductions for me and I'm like, oh, I would have never got those introductions if I hadn't told them, hey, this is what we're doing, and reminded people like what I do, because I think that's something people forget about as well, is like not everyone's always remembering what you're doing all the time, right? So giving people those updates is so important.
It is so updated, so good at the update. And I think the other thing that you just said too is like a lot of times we're doing all the hard things. We're doing all the really sexy things. And I just had this conversation last week with one of my one-on-one coaching clients. And I had somebody say to me last week, I feel like infinity is a little basic. And then I had someone say to her, I feel like infinity is a little basic. And this is what I said. I don't take offense to this because this is a thing. I have built an incredible, profitable business, not just a big business, but a profitable business on doing the basic things. And I think that so often people want to go out and do all the sexy things, all the hard things, all the flashy things. And it's actually the basic things that actually keep people going, keep people in business, and keep them profitable. The reason my Infinity program has had the results that it has is because I literally break it down so basic for people that it's like, we're just going to rinse and repeat this over and over and over. We have people that are crossing their first 7 figures in there. We have people in there that are hitting consistent 30, 40, 50, 100K months in there. Like, and it's because they were able to put their ego down and be like, I don't want to keep chasing hard and sexy and shiny. And I'm actually going to listen to what it feels like to be really boring for a year and really basic for a year. And let me tell you, I've never had so many clients with so much profitability ever in a program.
So what does boring look like? Like if someone was like, because I'm definitely like a victim of this, where I'm like, I've done all the traveling and I like do all the shit.
Yeah.
And it's like,
we got to make you boring, Kristina.
Yeah. Like I'm not boring, but I got to be boring in this season. So what does boring look like?
Yeah. So number one, boring is looking at what works in your business right now and how much are you continuously pouring gas on that instead of continuously going out and doing new things over and over and over. It's looking for visibility inside of your brand so that every single person on the internet knows who you are. I'm going to use one of my health coaches inside the space. When she came to work with me, she was hitting between like $5,000 and $7,000 a month consistently. And we put her for 6 months on a massive visibility tour, right? So podcasts, Instagram lives, speaking to other people's programs, everything. She is now around $50,000 to $60,000 a month consecutively. The offer didn't change. The Instagram stories didn't change. The content didn't change. You know what changed? Top of funnel. Yeah. And now people know who she is over and over and over. So now it's like, that's a boring thing, but we know that it works. So if you were on 5 podcasts last month, I need you to get on 10.
Yeah.
Instead of going to be like, okay, well now I'm at 40, 50. What's the new thing I can do? It's like, no, Let's stay at what is already working and keep doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like you have a Facebook group. Again, not super exciting, but are you talking to these people? Are you building relationship with them? Are you moving them through your sales process? Like all of those types of things. You guys, I've been in business as an entrepreneur for 3.5 years in the online space. I'm doing everything the same. Even
Mm.
down to my free Wednesday networking calls that every single person that has ever come in contact with me has been like, why do you still do this free call on Wednesdays? Because it works.
Yeah.
And it generates leads and it generates profit and it generates community. So I don't need to find something else to fill that hour on my Wednesday mornings. I just need to keep making this hour better and better and better. So
Mm.
boring is where it's at.
Yeah, no, I love that. And visibility is something I think people really, really underplay. Like I am always so shocked by the shit people pay for. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why wouldn't you just like go and like try to get in front of a few people? Like offer to do things for free, offer to like get in front of people, give free advice, like do these things. That's how we scaled our business so fast. I always tell the story, but it was at Fast Foundations. We gave people tons of free advice and people made tons of referrals for us.
Yeah.
And then even when we launched our membership, I went out and I taught in a bunch of communities and I've
Mm-hmm.
done like so much stuff, right? And so I think people really underplay like what knowing more people can do.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I met a girl yesterday in the DMs. She's absolutely my potential ideal client. And I was like, do you want me to do like a free audit like of your social media? And if I feel like I would buy from you if I came to your page? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. Okay, this will probably take me 15 minutes. I'll make her a quick video. I'll do it. And now I'm going to provide value. So what, maybe you're an Instagram person, maybe you're a social media person, right? Whatever this is, give people value in advance. I'm gonna tell you guys another quick story really quick. I just hired a Pinterest agency for the first time ever, right? And she's actually a client of mine. She's inside of my Infinity program. And for years, she's been on my networking call. She's been on my networking call for probably like 2 years. And she introduces herself every week and she's like the Pinterest expert. And it went in one ear and out the other. Because I was like, oh, Pinterest is cool, but like I don't really need it. And then she did something. She was like, hey, can I borrow you for 20 minutes? That's all I need from you. And I was like, sure, book 20 minutes on my calendar. And she came to this call prepared of what my Pinterest would look like if she handled it. She was like, Jill, every day you're posting your outfits on your Instagram stories and driving people to your Amazon link. I could literally create these pins to drive people here. You have a low ticket offer that really nobody's buying because your audience loves high ticket. I would put this here. Your podcast, I would put this here. And she blew my mind. Okay. Then she did something even cooler than this. She took this call and then she put it on her Instagram stories in little snippets. So then people were starting to see, like, this is how I would recommend Jillian Murphy do her Pinterest, right? So now she killed like two birds with one stone. Her Pinterest business in the last 2.5 months since she's been in Infinity has skyrocketed because now it's not just like, oh, I'm the Pinterest expert. It's like she's going in and giving you so much value in advance.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you know what? I think that that's so like such long-term vision for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes people do that kind of stuff and they're like, well, what if that person doesn't buy from me? Like, what if I spend that time like doing that on social? You have no idea who that person knows, right?
100%.
You might not that you might have been like, yeah, I still don't want Pinterest. Like I'm still not
No.
interested. And then the next time you talk to someone, you're so much more informed about the service. So you're able to be like, hey, like I actually think you should try Pinterest. You should talk to my girl here, right? Like
Yeah.
I think people don't really see the long game sometimes.
Yeah. And I've been talking about that so much, actually, even inside of my Infinity program. I'm like, you guys, even if her name's Camille, I said, even if I didn't purchase from Camille, I have probably talked about Camille on 10 podcasts. I'm literally talking about her right now on this podcast, right? Now you guys are listening to this podcast. You're like, oh, who's this Camille? You go to my followers, you see who it is. Like she's getting brand visibility and brand recognition for something that she did for me for free. And this content lives on forever. I'm literally talking about her all the time now. I'm talking about my CMO all the time now. Like there is something to be said about being in proximity with people, and the ROI is important, but the ROR, which is return on relationship, is way more important.
Mm. Jillian, that's such a great place to end off. I love that because I think that is so aligned with the way that you and I both do business. And I think relationship is so key and so underrated. And literally, we're running a brunch next weekend. And I was like, guys, this is how you meet people and how people buy from you is like you go places and like you talk to people and you know, like you build those relationships. And Jill, why don't you tell the people who are listening today, like how they can get in your world and what you've got going on?
Yeah, so absolutely come over to me on the Instagram handles, the Jillian Murphy. Come over, say hello. We have lots of freebies inside of our link in bio. I also have a free networking call. So if you're listening to this right now and you want to get to know new people, you want to network with a bunch of new high-level entrepreneurs, we usually get between 30 and 50 people on that call every Wednesday. Come over and check it out. The link is in my bio. And then let's just have a conversation. If you're looking to grow your sales, you're looking to grow your income, your profit for 2025, I would love to have an opportunity to walk alongside of you.
Yay, I love it. I will link all of that there. Jill is so good at what she does and she like added so much value in this podcast. So this is just the beginning. And there's just so many ways that you can kind of get in Jill's world. So make sure that you do it. Jill, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Kristina.
Yay.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Scale Your Sales podcast. If today's episode has you fired up, would you do me a huge favor and leave a review over on Apple or Spotify podcast? Or, of course, you can always take a screenshot and share it on your social media. That is the way we grow this show and so that other people can absolutely learn how to grow their sales as well. I am on a mission to change the mindset of sales. I want people to freaking love sales because the reality is sales is the foundation of everything you do. It's how your business generates revenue consistently. So remember, keep showing up and being unapologetic about selling because once you fall in love with selling, the sky is absolutely the limit. Until next time, happy selling, and my DMs are always open. I can't wait to get to know you better.